What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful day. Beautiful day today. The only thing I can say right now is that the temperature is a little bit less than all the other days. So right now it's about 72 degrees and about 60, I don't know, like 62, 63% humidity, which is very nice, very nice. Fresh water with ice. Don't forget the ice. Delicious. Delicious. We have a filtration system, but the water does not come out dull. It's, I don't know, it's still good. And you need minerals in there for that flavor. If you don't have anything like that, if it's just water, just hydrogen, and 2 atoms of oxygen for the molecules, right? It's not as satisfying when you drink it. So I recommend mineral water. Nice mineral water with ice. Don't be afraid of the ice. A lot of people, they're afraid of the ice. They're like, give me a sore throat. No, it will not give you a sore throat at all. That's your imagination. I mean, you know, there's a word it's called, and they invented it for a reason. It's called coincidence. So if you drink ice water and then, I don't know, a few hours later, the next day, you have a sore throat, there's no correlation. It's called coincidence. That's why they invented that word, coincidence. That means two things happen independent of each other. So, you know, I may, you know, what's a good coincidence, you know? So my neighbor rings my doorbell, and when he rings my doorbell, I can hear a crow outside making noise. The two are not connected. The crow just happens to be making the noise at that moment. It's a coincidence. Same thing with this. If you have, I can't swallow. If that happens to you after you've had this, it's nothing involving this. It's called a coincidence. That's it, coincidence. A lot of things in life are a coincidence. But a lot of people, you know, their brain has to find a pattern, so they have to create a reason for that coincidence. Anyway, so today I found something. To me it's a toy, but it's not really a toy. So I've had little fruit flies, you know, flying around. Little fruit flies. They're about the size of a I don't know, like a what would be a quarter of a Tic Tac. Remember those Tic Tacs? And they fly, you know, around. You can't get them. They're hard to get. I mean, you could spray them down with some Raid, but if they're in your house, that Raid is going to get everywhere. So you don't want to do that. So I went and got one of these. Looks like a tennis racket, right? It is not a tennis racket. It's more fun than a tennis racket. So I had them, you know, inside for a few days. You'd kill one or two. I know there's little traps you can get. They have, like, I don't know, it's vinegar or something, some kind of vinegar solution, and it looks like an apple. You open up the top, that plastic, you fill it up with that vinegar solution, you close it, it has little holes on top, and what happens is the fruit flies, they like that smell. I don't know why they like it, but they like it. And then they go and they fly in the holes and get trapped and fall into the vinegar. And they can't get out, so you collect them that way. But this is more fun. So I went in there a little while ago. See that button there? Makes it red. There, the button right there. And you hold that and you see them and you go back and forth a few times, and then you'll hear like they're frying up in here. You hear like a zip, zip, something like that. And within less than a minute, I got rid of them. Just a few times going like this. So had a lot of fun doing that. It only lasted a minute. I came out here hoping to find more little things flying around. I don't see any. Like, they passed the word on. He's coming out with that tennis racket. Hide. But yeah, it's a really good thing, you know. It's I did that, boom, boom, and I could hear them. So anyway, then I said to myself, now how strong can this thing be? How strong, right? So I grabbed it with my two fingers on my left hand here, and I picked up from the metal part, and at the same time I pushed this button here. It's strong. Yeah, it gave me a shock. I felt it go up, and it only lasted for like maybe a second, and then I released it. I go, what, 2 batteries have that much power? So, but I did feel like an awakening. All right. It's the same idea. Those lamps you hang out. If you live on the East Coast or somewhere where it's really muggy and you have we don't have a lot of mosquitoes here. Matter of fact, years ago we didn't have any, and then I don't know, they snuck on a plane from somewhere and they got here. Now we have a few, but not that bad. If you're on the East Coast right now, you'd be like slapping. You'd have all these bumps everywhere. But here, not that common. Not that common, especially if you dry out your yard, like if you have buckets or something, or plates that collect water. If you get rid of all of that, and there's no place for them to go and breed, then you won't have any. But occasionally you will see one. You will see one. Now I have this. I wish I would see one. I wish I'd get it right here. So they made killing fruit flies fun. Anyway, but I'm out of them now. So it's quiet out here. Occasionally you'll hear a vehicle, motor car go by. Like that. You know, when I was a kid and I would go fishing, there were those morning flies, little ones. They would hang around right by the sand. They'd fly around, they'd annoy you. I wish I had one of these. You know, this should be like a mandatory thing when you go to the beach. Get one of these and just a few times back and forth. You'll clear out the whole place. I remember being a kid and my father was, I don't know, he wasn't like an AC guy. Every year he would promise the same thing. Every year around end of summer, early fall, he would say, you know what, next year we're going to get AC for the whole house, central. And I'd say, well, we just get, you know, just for the windows. He goes, no, we'll do it right. We're going to do it right. We're going to get the whole house. And every year would come by, and every year would be like, nah, maybe not this year. We'll do it next year, though, for sure. One time, we were at Sears, and there was one of those salesmen there that you know, they sell the service. They actually, you know, will do this. They come to your house, and they'll put AC throughout the house, central system. So my first time I ever saw my father go up to the guy and talk to him about it. And I said, that's a good sign. He's going to do it this year or next, because my father said next summer. And I'm like, yeah, if you push it that far, he's going to change his mind. It should be like, yeah, you guys do it in the wintertime, we'll do it now. I'll pay you now for it. Give me a discount. So the guy was telling him all this cool stuff. Yeah, you get each room and you can do this and thermostats and cold air coming in. And I'm all excited because I would have a hard time sleeping. It's not the heat, it's that disgusting humidity. I couldn't stand it. All right, I would have a hard time sleeping. Some people, they'd lock their door in their room and maybe even have a couple of sheets on them and fall asleep. I could not do that. I had every window open. I had fans going. It was just too much. So the central AC never happened. We never got it. And then you know, I guess we all ganged up on him and said, you know, if we're not going to get the central, why don't we get a few of those window ones? And then he came up with the idea, well, you know what, he goes, we'll get a nice big one, a big one, powerful, and we'll put it in the kitchen, and then we'll leave all the room doors open, and the cold air will just find its way into everybody's room. And I said, no, that's not going to work. There's a reason why they rate these, and it tells you, you know, this much power is for this much square footage. If you need more than that, you have to get a second unit, you know, or something, you know, bigger. My father's not, I think it'll work. So we get this big one, this really big one, and we put it in the kitchen. and it did a great job in the kitchen, kept the whole place cold, right? Then you would go, around down the hall into my room, and my room was hot. No matter how big the door opening was, it didn't matter. The air, by the time it got to my room, would cool down. Molecules would start moving fast again, actually, not slow, fast. And then the faster they moved, the hotter the air. So we did that for about a month before my father got the idea that now it's not working. And he said, well, why don't we get 2 more of these? So we ended up getting one for my room and one for my sister down the hall, and then I was able to sleep. I had mine till like 60, and I'd keep it there, and I'd go to in my room at night. I even needed a little blanket, but that's the way I like it. I like it where the air is cold, but you're warm, right? Somebody would say, if you need a blanket, well, why do you have the AC on? But that's what makes me fall asleep. In the wintertime, this is way before I met my bride. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. In the wintertime, no matter how cold it was, I always kept the windows, opened. Not all the way, I didn't want my father to come in there for something and say, hey, we're paying the bills here for the heat. What's going on? But I would keep it, I had 2 windows in my room. Kind of like one was here, one was here. So I would keep the window open like 3-4 inches each one, about that much. Be like that open, and in the wintertime that's enough to freeze your room. So I would be in there, nice cold air in there, I'd be bundled up, in a nice blanket, and I would fall asleep. I wouldn't wake up at all until the next day, 8 hours later. And that's the way I liked it. Then I met my bride. And at the beginning, she acted like she was for that. I went to Maine, went to a few cold places, and I always had the window open. And we'd, bundle up in the blanket in there, and I enjoyed it. But apparently, she was pretending, because now she will not have a window cracked open for anything. Claims it's noisy outside, and, she could hear it. I don't think so. So that's the way. Some people, they don't want that cold air, but I miss that cold air. But when I first met my bride, she was like, yeah, open up the window, yeah, and that was not real. That was not real. She does not appreciate cold nights, wants the temperature in the room to be warm in the winter time and cool in the summer. But doesn't, in the summertime I want it, nice and cold, and in the wintertime I want the windows cracked open. I want a constant flow of air. And even, like we would have those heavy-duty thunderstorms that would roll through, I had my windows wide open, and I remember I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I would see the curtains like ghosts back and forth in my room from the wind. And a few times when it would rain especially, I had the windows wide open. But I remember being in my room in a deep sleep, and all of a sudden a massive sound of thunder would hit, like something that was close by, like 500 yards away, and it would wake me up as if missiles were falling out of the sky. Crazy loud. And at some point you feel, when you wake up from a deep sleep, like you're being attacked. This is like, bombs dropping. But I always enjoyed the coziness of a nice thunderstorm. Something about it, miss those. We don't have many thunderstorms out here. I have seen some bad ones in the desert, or some good ones. So yeah, it's like you're watching, like ahead where the road is, and all of a sudden it darkens up, clouds appear from nowhere, and then this lightning. One time we're coming back from Las Vegas, and every 7-8 seconds there was thunder and lightning on that road. You'd see the sky light up at night with like veins across the sky, and you'd hear the loud explosion somewhere, because you get the flash first, and then depending on how far it is, you count 1001, 1002. What is it, like 5 seconds per mile or 7 seconds per mile, whatever. But you hear that massive boom, nice and bassy, I miss that. We don't hear it here in the city. I have to go in the desert when it's raining to get that stuff. Yeah, but I always loved the windows to be opened, no matter when it was. I didn't like that intense heat. I wanted to be warm, like I'm explaining here. I wanted to be warm under the covers, but my air in the room, I wanted it to be cold. So yeah. But here, I don't know, something with the atmosphere does not produce thunder and lightning. It does if you go a little further out, but not right here. I remember when I was a kid, in the summertime, you'd get a nice bad rainstorm. Like out of nowhere, it would start raining cats and dogs. I mean, really hard rain. And in the front of my house, on the main road there, the sides would flood. And you'd get like a river coming down. And after like, when everything would be, like all the crap from the street would be cleared out, I would go out there in like just shorts and run around the neighborhood stomping in the the little the river that would come down the road. I enjoyed that. It was I wouldn't do it now. They'd say there's that crazy guy, belongs in the mental hospital. But when you're a kid, you can get away with doing stuff like that. Get drenched, and then after having fun like that, I'd go upstairs, take a nice shower, with the windows open and that rain air coming in, that fresh smelling ionized air, and then have my hair combed up and everything, and fresh clothes on, start watching some nice television show in the back room. You know how those days were back in the 70s. You turn on, we had 4, 5, and 7, and channel 2 was PBS. And I'd always have something to watch, even though it was only 4 stations. And then we had 2 stations on the UHF side that were impossible to get. There's another thing. My father would always say, yeah, maybe next year, if we're doing good, health-wise, he would say, we're going to get one of those antennas. You remember those antennas? Everybody who liked to watch good television, they had them on their rooftops. There were these big, metal spiky things up there. Yeah, those. And I couldn't get channel 56. I couldn't get channel 38. And that had all the good stuff. Had all the cartoons, Flintstones, the Jetsons were on there. I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched, all that good stuff. And I couldn't get it. I could get it good enough where, I'd say, okay, it's snowy, but it's good enough. And I'd watch those shows. I loved them. Superman was on there with George Reeves. What was another cool show? The Monkees. I loved watching the Monkees. I don't know why, but I was always a fan of that group. I actually saw them live, 1987. Saw them live, but some noise going on there. But it was, one of those things my father always would say, yeah, we're going to get that antenna. We never did, but eventually the cable people rolled around when it was brand new. We saw them digging the trench in the road and putting the cables in. And we were the first people in my neighborhood to get that, cable, Star TV or whatever it was called. I remember the guy came over our house, rang our doorbell. We answered. Usually my father would be, who the hell is that? That's it. We don't know him, unannounced, don't open. But he was in a mood to talk, so we opened that up. Guy came in with his briefcase with papers, and he was telling my father, we're lining up the neighborhood with cable, he said, and you may want to be one of the first, but we were the first in that area. And he talked to my father and explained everything, and I thought it was a great idea. He said you get HBO, you get that, on and on and on. Mentioned Playboy. I was a little kid back then. He mentioned Playboy, and then after, he asked my father, so what do you think? You gonna get it? My father, yeah. He goes, I will get that. Gave him for sure thing. And the guy goes, all right, so what channels do you want? So he pulls out his thing to check them off. And my father, they go, oh, we get the HBO, we get this, we get that. They start going down the line, sports. And then he says to the guy, without telling me or anything, he says to the guy, and we're going to get Playboy for him. He looks at me, he goes, you like that, right? I go, yeah, we get that. But then I said, I don't think he understands what that is. I don't think so. So I say to my father in front of the guy, I go, you know what that is? He goes, yeah. He goes, it's the rock and roll bands. I go, no, that's not. That's MTV. That's not Playboy. And when my father said Playboy for him, meaning me, I was looking at the guy, and the expression on his face was priceless. Like, he looked at me, looked at my father, like, gave a look like, wow, very progressive in this house. And then when my father kind of gave the idea to the guy that he had no idea what Playboy was, he thought it was rock and roll and bands and things like that, things that I would watch. I said to him, no, that's MTV, not Playboy. He thought like Playboy, like play the guitar. So we didn't get Playboy. But we ended up getting that, and they came to our house, and they actually, put all the equipment and everything, and we had, for the first time ever, the channels that we couldn't see before, we could see them crystal clear. Well, as good as the television technology was back then. And I was able to watch all those shows and UHF, and didn't matter where it was, we had good reception. But I will say, when I was a kid, I had a friend up the street, and his father had put in an antenna like that, nice big one on the rooftop. And one day his parents were not home, and he invited me in. He says, hey, you want to watch some TV? I remember it was getting dark out. And I said, yeah, all right. He goes, yeah, we got the antenna. So I said, even better. So I went in his house, and he put Star Trek, which I'm not really a fan of those shows, but I sat there, and for the first time I got to see Mr. Spock and Sulu and Kirk and all those crystal clear on the television set. And I was like, wow. I go, these images have sold me. I think I'm going to go home and talk to my father about this. And my father always had the whole, we'll do it next year. But anyway, we never got the antenna, but we did get cable, so it solved that problem. Right now, it feels like just before rain comes. That smell in the air, that crisp freshness. That's what it's like, but there are no clouds in the sky, so but it's nice because the temperature dropped. Like the other day, yesterday, at this time it was 82 degrees, and now it's like 70, 71 right now. What's going on?
Do you know what do you have the Stranger vinyl?
No, I don't think I have the Stranger. Why?
You know what it looks like?
Yeah.
What does it look like? Can you send me a photo when you get the chance?
Okay, I'll send you a photo. Why? You want to buy it?
No, I want to draw it.
Oh. Okay.
I'm making a pin.
I'll send you my daughter, they both are, but especially my younger one, has turned out to be a big Billy Joel fan. She kind of listens to him the way I used to listen to him when I was her age. That's kind of weird, it's same taste like that. I mean, she listens to the new stuff. She knows all about that. I listen to the new stuff too. I'm going to tell you something about the new stuff. I enjoy listening to Sabrina Carpenter. I like that song Espresso. It's a good tune, but she's got a lot of good tunes. I mean, thing is that music is, you prefer the music of your generation or the stuff you grew up on. But if you listen if you listen to the new stuff long enough, at first you'd be like, not as good as my stuff, not as good as the stuff I grew up on. And that may be true, I think the melodies in my time were a bit more developed, but there's a lot of good tunes out there. A lot of good tunes, but you just have to listen to them. I always said when I was younger, I don't want to get stuck in a decade where I only listen to that music when I get older. Yeah, that. It's a mama's boy going home, get a kiss on the cheek from mom. So I said, I'm gonna, expose myself to the new stuff, and I think you have to, right? I mean, I know that my parents, my grandparents, whatever knowledge they learned in their prime of life, right, is pretty much where they got stuck. So whatever they thought was true scientifically, back when they were 20, 25 years old, that's as advanced as their knowledge got. They never went beyond that. And I would say to my father, update yourself once in a while. My mother, I know, doesn't. Whatever she learned back in her youth, that's it. There's no advancement on that. Science never progressed beyond that point as far as she's concerned, right? But for me, I read the new stuff. I listen to the brand new music that comes out. Anything new, I listen to it. So I know all that. I know all the new artists. I know all the new tunes. I get Billboard magazine. And I will say, at first, when I was listening to the new stuff, I was having a hard time with it. I was not enjoying it as much. But now, after years and years of listening to just, basically the new stuff, there's a lot of good stuff out there. You don't want to get biased and say, only my stuff was good. But, we tend to do that. We tend to hear something from like 1977 and say, oh yeah, that was awesome. Stuff they do now sucks. My thing is, I have a big issue with AI developing, the music or helping out too much with the vocals. I don't like that. It sounds artificial. It doesn't have that human, emotion to it, and I don't appreciate that. But I do appreciate a few singers. Sabrina Carpenter is one of them. I appreciated the fact that she was on with Paul Simon on the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. I like the way she did her tune there with his tune. And he did that tune with George Harrison back in, 70, 75, 76, 75, 50th, yeah. I am a Paul Simon fan too. Enjoyed, Kodachrome as a solo artist was probably one of my favorite tunes that he put together. Really smooth going there, but she did a great job singing with him. But I love Espresso. I enjoy listening to that tune. They did Homeward Bound, and good. I was going to say lyricist, but I wanted to say good vocalist. She's a very good vocalist. Let me tell you something about music today that I find kind of weird. So, in my prime and before that, you would get an album, open it up, and, let me look up what you wanted, send her the thing before I continue here. She wants a some of these you can't make copies. Let's see. So you get the album, go home, open it up. I would dissect the whole thing. At first, I would not read the lyrics at all. I would go through many listens, just hearing the music and the way it was intended. You know, I would sit in my room on my bed, speakers going nice, and I would hear it, you know, a bunch of times. And then after I did that, then I would start looking at the lyrics and looking at who played on it, who wrote it, all that stuff. So here's the thing. In my time, when you saw, you know, the credits written by one or two people, you know, sometimes it was one did both music and lyrics, sometimes it was both. Bernie Taupin, Elton John, one did the lyrics, one did the music. Sometimes it was a blend. Sometimes they did some of the words, some of the lyrics, some of the music, some of the, you know, arrangement, right? Each of them, and they both did something on both sides of that. Nowadays, you can go on the internet, Wikipedia, you'll find a song that's a hit today, and there's like 7, 8 writers, and they have AI to help them. So I don't know what's going on with humanity, but there was a time when people had an easier time being creative than now. You know, I look at, you know, hits, and I say, who wrote that? And I'll go and I'll, you know, research it on the internet, and there'll be like 5, 6, 7 writers to one song with 4 verses, same chorus. Maybe there's a bridge once in a while, which I prefer songs that have a bridge. Always have. I appreciate the bridge. The bridge is like its own separate song within a song. I always appreciated artists, writers who added a bridge, which is kind of like a verse, but it's different from the rest of them. It's the best part of the song. I enjoy that part. It's like the artist was creative enough to write something a bit different that still fits in with that song. I know Billy Joel has bridges everywhere, but yeah, love the bridge. And now you can look it up for yourself. You know, you go check out a tune, and you will see there's a bunch of people involved in the writing, a bunch. Where, you know, in my time there were like max 2. Yeah, there were songs that were maybe 3 people, whatever. But the majority of songs back when I was young was basically one person or 2 people. Oh, hold on, she wants something else here. Try this one here. So yeah, and I would always investigate who wrote the song. There's something coming out now. Start swinging this thing like. Sometimes you hit them, you don't even know they're there. You hear a zap. Nothing. I want to get it right in front here where you can see it. But anyway, yeah, I always would investigate who wrote it. You know, like there's bands that'll have, like even in the past, there were bands that would have like a bunch of names, but that was the band, right? The band, you know, like U2. It would have Bono, or Bono. I think it's Bono. It's Bono. Sonny Bono was the other guy that crashed into the tree. I got Juve, right? He was Sonny Bono, but Bono is from U2. I love that band. Big fan of U2. But anyway, with that band, it'll say lyrics Bono. lyrics Bono, music U2, and it'll list them. If it tells you who they are, it'll show the other three guys, including Bono. So there'll be four. But he's known for writing the lyrics. I mean, there may be a couple songs where the Edge threw a couple of ideas in there, but for the most part, Bono writes the lyrics. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, most of the songs are credited to them, but there are songs where they have an extra guy, extra woman, Katie Lang, on the credit. But like I said, overwhelming, the songs back when I was growing up that were on the radio were written by one or two people. That was it. Now it's like they have a whole crowd. Whole crowd comes in and they write a little bit. Which I don't know if that's the best idea when you write a song. I mean, it's hard to collaborate to begin with, but to have 7 people on a song and make it flow the way you want it to, very hard to express what you're thinking so that everybody is thinking the same way when it comes to the lyrics. And the structure. It's not just what it's going to be about, it's the way the rhyme is going to go, the way you want to phrase it, the way you want it to be sung. So you get, the more people you have, the more interference, but yeah, so that's the thing that's changed now. More people writing for that one song. Anything coming? Oh, something there. I got one. Anything else? Anything else want to come here? Nothing. Yeah, I was trying to think, there used to be a time when you would see many writers for a song in the old days, but like I said, that was when they would have a band and everybody would give like 2 cents of information. They say, "This is my 2 cents worth of advice on that song," and they would get credit for it. But even the Beatles it's not accurate, when they say Lennon McCartney. A lot of those songs were written as an individual, right? You can tell which ones were written by Lennon and which ones were written by McCartney. There's a difference in style. But because they had a contract with the record company, and it said that basically it didn't matter who wrote the song, as long as it was them two, as long as those two were involved in some way, even if it was a 10-90 split, like let's say McCartney wrote 90% of a song and then Lennon stepped in and said, all right, we're gonna try this little note here. No matter what it was always Lennon and McCartney. That's the way the agreement was. Even if Lennon or McCartney wrote their own song all the way through, it still was credited with Lennon and McCartney, which is, I don't know why they did it that way. So I remember a few years ago, I guess they were remastering the Beatles catalog, and Paul McCartney went up to Yoko Ono because he's got to get her permission, and he said, is it okay that on the new remastered stuff, if I wrote the song all the way through, music and lyrics, that instead of it saying Lennon McCartney, we switch it to say McCartney Lennon if I wrote it? But you know what, you get into all kind of issues with that. Who decides, who believes who, and I mean, is Yoko Ono going to believe Paul McCartney on some songs that she thinks that John Lennon wrote? She'll be like, I think John wrote that, I don't think you wrote that. So she said no to him. She said no, and a lot of people say, it's a little bit petty of her. But I understand it's been that way since the beginning, and then it kind of splits them up. It's like, he wrote that, he wrote that. In the old days, it was kind of assumed that they both wrote each song together, but they did not. I mean, you can tell which ones are McCartney. Eleanor Rigby, Let It Be, Mother Mary there, that song there, Let It Be, not Mother Mary, Let It Be. You can tell it's McCartney style. You know, the other songs, Nowhere Man, you know, you can tell that sounds like Norwegian Wood. That sounds like, although that one's a little bit Bob Dylan in there too. I think he took a little bit from Dylan. But that sounds like John Lennon. I can hear any Beatles song and I can tell you who the writer was from the two of them. You know, I know that some of them are collaborated a little bit, like say it's a 70-30 split or an 80-20 split on some of them. Some of them, you know, 90% of it was written and then writer's block or couldn't continue, and McCartney would say to Lennon, hey, help me out a little bit with this, and he would, and then he, you know, would be Lennon McCartney no matter what. And you know, what are you gonna do? Yoko is tough, you know, she's not gonna back off of that, although, you know, you want to tell her you did get credit for Imagine many years later. I think she went to court and she told them that she had, you know, collaborated on that song. It wasn't just John Lennon writing that. And now when you see the new copies of Imagine in the writing credits, it will say Lennon Ono. So she got her thing. But, you know, I understand Paul McCartney's argument. You know, he's basically saying, I'm not taking Lennon's name off, but if I wrote the majority or all of that song, then flip the order around where it says McCartney Lennon. But then when you say that, it makes it look like there's any big deal. You know, what's the big deal? You're still a 50-50 partnership, and the fact that your name comes first, to me, I don't see it as any more significant. You know, okay, it says Lennon McCartney, what does that mean? So what? You're still on there, and the only reason they did it Lennon McCartney is because it's alphabetical. You know, not for any other reason. I mean, most names that you see, you know, partnerships in business or whatever, it always is, well, not always, but I'd say 95% of the time it's alphabetical order. The only time, I mean, there's many examples where it's not, but the one that really sticks out is Simon and Garfunkel. Simon really, you know, it's like, I mean, he was the brains, but the other guy was the voice. You know, Simon was the brains. He's another guy. Words and music, Paul Simon. You know, I mean, there may be some songs where, and I don't know of any, but there may be some where it was Paul Simon and someone else collaborating, right? But Paul Simon, for the most part, wrote words and music by himself. You know, the other guy had the voice, though. Art Garfunkel was able to, you know, Bridge Over Troubled Water is an example where Paul Simon could never pull that off. I mean, there are versions of him singing solo on that song, you know, singing it by himself. Not as good. The other guy just had the voice, but Simon could write. And he was generating the material where they were making the money, so it became Simon and Garfunkel. And it sounds better. I don't know if I'm used to it and that's why it sounds better, or Garfunkel and Simon. Yeah. But like I said, maybe I'm I'm used to it now, and Simon and Garfunkel just, you know, it's smoother. Even Paul McCartney said one time, he said, McCartney Lennon sounds fine, but Lennon McCartney sounds slightly better. I get another text here. So yeah, I used to have a fun time going to the record store. It was the highlight of my week. I would go once a week, Saturdays, when I was older, and then when I was younger, it was random. You know, it could have been Monday after school. It was generally after school. I had a place in my neighborhood, and I would go there after school. But when I got older, it was Saturdays. I would go down. Tower Records was my place when I got older, and I would go and I would investigate the whole building, everything. I would go everywhere, check out all the new stuff, the old stuff. I'd walk out there with a bunch of things, but there's a rhythm to that. Can't duplicate that by hand. LAPD with the helicopter. So that's it. I mean, I'm talking about Tower Records, and it doesn't exist anymore. I miss Tower Records. That was one of my pit stops as a older, younger person. I would go in there and I would check everything out. I remember when, this is before the internet had gotten a grip. I remember Leonard Cohen, there was rumors, something new coming from Leonard Cohen, and I didn't know when it was coming. And I would go down to Tower Records to the Leonard Cohen section. I would, look, and I wouldn't see anything. And then one time, somebody said that definitely, that Tuesday that was coming, Leonard Cohen was releasing a brand new album. And I heard that and I was like, I gotta go. So I went down there and all excited I was gonna get the album. So I go down there to get the album and I didn't see it. I went to the section, I was like, this is not a good sign. Not a good sign at all. So I went to the counter, there was a skinny guy there. Another text, hold on. So he said to me, Leonard Cohen. He goes, I don't think so. I would have heard about that. He goes, no. He goes, I'm pretty sure. So he goes, let's go check. I go, already checked. What's the point of you coming and doing the same thing? I know it's not there. So he went anyway with, so I followed him over, okay. And he went through the whole thing. He goes, yeah. He goes, no, yeah. I didn't think so. I go, yeah, well, I told you it's not here. What'd you think? I made that up, even though I'm looking for it. So he goes, let me check for you. And this is what he should have done originally. So he had this big, thick book of release dates for who knows how far back. And he went through to the modern day. And he looks and he gave me a date. And I go, you guys know that ahead of time, that far? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, just come up here and ask next time. I go, well, if I knew that you knew, I would have asked first. But I also wanted the excitement of finding it myself. So I went up, he told me the date, and then I waited, because it was several months later. I waited, and time went by, now it's many years ago, but, at the time it was going by slow. Finally it went by, and I went back to the exact same spot. And I went, and this time I noticed it all over the place. They had it up on the wall. And I go, yeah, this is it for sure. And I grabbed it, and I couldn't wait. The train was just not going fast enough for me to get home. I couldn't wait to get home. I was like, I was trying to like mentally make the train go faster because I wanted to get home and hear the album. So I get home, go upstairs, close the door in my room, open up the turntable. I put the album on top. And it was very exciting for me, and I sat there like a zombie watching it turn while I'm listening to the music. And big fan of that album, big fan of him, big fan of his. So that's it. We're gonna end it right here. Gonna go inside. I may be back. You never know. I'm gonna go inside, see what's going on with the rest of the family, and I may be back. Maybe I have more to say. You never know. Maybe there'll be flies on here. I can zap them. Nothing. Not even something small. All right. That's it for now. Ciao.